She transformed to a man and fell in love with a gay. The only daughter of a renowned and strict pastor in my community. Grew up as a tomboy, loving the things boys did and always being among the boys. Left home for university abroad and became a trans man. This is my story. The moment he looked into my eyes, I wish I met you before I knew myself. My heart cracked in a way I never imagined. I had left Kenya to find myself, to become who I truly was. But now, standing in front of Kenzo, my whole world felt like a cruel joke. The irony was unbearable. Growing up, I never felt like a girl. My father, a well-respected pastor, always reminded me that I was a daughter of God. But I hated dresses, despised long hairs, and felt uncomfortable in my own skin. My mother said it was a phase. My father blamed it on demonic influences. But inside, I knew I was trapped. I never fit in with the girls. From as early as I could remember, I was drawn to the world of boys, their energy, their freedom, their games. In primary school, while other girls plaited each other's hair and giggled over their tiny pink handbags, I was in the dust, running barefoot with the boys, climbing trees and racing bicycles. My skirts were always torn, my knees forever bruised, and my heart swelled with pride when the boys treated me as one of their own. One afternoon, during a football match, something happened that changed everything. I had always played on the boys' team unofficially, but that day, our coach, Mr. Omondi, let me step in when one of the players got injured. I ran, passed, tackled. Every moment felt natural, as if I was meant to be there. And then, in the last minutes of the game, I scored the winning goal. The boys cheered, lifted me onto their shoulders, and for that moment, I felt invincible. But as I turned to the teacher's section, I saw my father's face, cold, disapproving. That was the first time I realized I was different, that I wasn't supposed to belong in that world. The following Sunday, my father stood on the church pulpit, his voice stern as he preached about the roles and order in the family. A girl must embrace her place, must honor her femininity, must walk in the grace that God has given her. His eyes found mine in the crowd, his message clear. That night, he called me to his study. "You are not a boy, Hadis. Do not embarrass me again." But how could I be what I was not? The mirror became my enemy. The dresses my mother forced me into felt like a costume, a lie. I looked at my body and wished I could peel it off like an ill-fitting garment. My mother prayed harder, buying me dolls and pink dresses. My father watched in silence, his disappointment growing with each passing year. And I stopped trying to make them understand. By the time I reached high school, the discomfort had turned into torment. I hated my curves, despised my soft voice. At night, I prayed not to be a good daughter, not to be an obedient Christian, but to wake up in a different body, a body that felt like home. If you have watched to this point, it means you are enjoying the story. Kindly click on the subscribe button so that you won't miss our channel and you'll also be updated on our latest story each time it drops. Then came the scholarship, Canada, a place where no one knew me, where I could finally be free. My father sent me off with a warning. Remember who you are. I nodded, but deep inside, I knew I was finally going to become who I was meant to be. It was a dream for many, but for me, it was an escape. There, I finally had the freedom to make my own choices. I started researching, learning about gender identity, and connecting with people like me. After 1 year, I made the biggest decision of my life. I transitioned into a man. I became Brian. The process was not easy. Hormones changed my body. My voice deepened and my face became more defined. I felt powerful, like I had taken control of my destiny. I sent pictures back home, but my parents never responded. The silence was expected. In their eyes, I no longer existed. Then came Kenzo. He was everything I had ever wanted in a person. Kind, intelligent, funny. We met in a coffee shop when he helped me pick up my spilled books. The connection was instant. We started talking every day, texting all night. I had never felt this way before. But Kenzo was gay, and that was the beginning of my downfall. At first, I convinced myself it didn't matter. Love was love, right? But the more I loved him, the more I realized the painful truth. He could never love me back in the way I wanted. He saw me as his best friend, his brother. I was trapped in a different way, now in a prison of my own making. Kenzo would talk about his struggles, about how hard it was growing up gay in a street African household. I listened, I understood, but I could never tell him the truth, that I had once been like him, an African child, suffocated by expectations, that I had changed everything only to end up in the same painful space. One night, he introduced me to his boyfriend. That was when my heart shattered completely. I smiled, pretended to be happy, but inside, I was drowning. What had I done to myself? I had left home, lost my family, changed my entire identity, only to fall for a love that would never be mine. The next morning, I forced myself out of bed and went to class. Everything felt mechanical, walking, talking, pretending to be okay. Kenzo sat beside me, oblivious of the storm inside me. He laughed at something on his phone and nudged me. "Look at this meme, bro. It's hilarious." I smiled weakly. I wasn't his bro. Not really. That evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and examined myself again. The broad shoulders, the deep voice, the flat chest. I had worked so hard to achieve this. So why did I feel so empty? Kenzo invited me out that night to meet his friends. I almost refused, but staying alone in my thoughts felt worse. The club was packed with vibrant, happy people. Music thumped through the air and laughter surrounded me. But I felt detached, like a ghost, watching the world move without me. Then I met Liam. He was charming, confident, and full of life. He was openly bisexual and flirted with everyone, including me. "You've got a mysterious vibe," he teased. "What's your story?" I hesitated, then fed him the same lie I told everyone. I was just a regular guy, figuring life out. We danced, we drank, and for a moment I let myself feel normal. Liam leaned in, whispered in my ear, "You are different. I like that." It sent a chill down my spine, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe this was my chance to move on. We started hanging out. Unlike Kenzo, Liam saw me as someone attractive, someone desirable. But something always felt off. I couldn't fully open up, couldn't be vulnerable. I kept waiting for the moment he would look at me differently, the moment he would find out the truth. One evening, Liam and I were alone at his place. He kissed me. his hands tracing my body. For the first time, I panicked. My past, my choices, my identity. It all clashed in my head. I pulled away abruptly. I can't do this. Liam looked at me, confused. Why not? I had no answer. Because I wasn't who I said I was. But I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. Because my heart still belonged to someone who could never love me back. I left his apartment, my mind spinning. I was losing myself and I didn't know how to stop it. Days turned into weeks and I withdrew from everyone. Kenzo noticed my absence and finally confronted me. Brian, what's going on? Talk to me. I stared at him, wanting to scream, wanting to tell him everything, but I stayed silent. One evening, I picked up my phone and dialed home. My mother answered, her voice existent. Mama, I whispered. There was a long pause. Then she started crying. My child. The next thing I heard, she was speaking in tongues and praying and shouting and casting. For the first time in years, I let my own tears fall. Through therapy and deep soul searching, I made another choice, a painful one. I decided to detransition. The process was difficult, but I finally understood that changing my body had not solved the real conflict within me. The physical reversal was not immediate, nor was it simple. Stopping testosterone came with side effects, mood swings, fatigue, and emotional breakdowns that left me feeling weaker than ever. My voice would never return to how it was, and some of the changes were irreversible. But for the first time, I wasn't running. I was facing myself. I returned to Kenya, unsure of how my father would receive me. He barely looked at me the first night. My mother, though, held me like she had never let me go in the first place. You are still my child, she said. That was enough for now. The road to healing was a long one. Some days I regretted everything. Other days I felt relieved. I started working with an organization that helped people struggling with identity crisis. I wasn't the same person anymore, but maybe I could help someone else avoid my mistakes. One day, Kenzo called. He had noticed my absence and wanted to check on me. We talked for hours. He didn't judge, didn't pity me, just listened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I realized something important. I had spent years trying to change myself to fit an idea of happiness that wasn't mine. But happiness isn't about changing your body. It's about understanding your soul. I started writing about my journey, about the confusion, the regrets, and the lessons. Maybe someone else would read my story and find clarity before taking irreversible steps. Maybe they would learn that self-acceptance is the greatest transformation of all. I sought medical guidance, but the damage was already done. My body had changed in ways I could never fully reverse. I had to live with the consequences, but I had a new goal: to help others find peace before taking drastic steps. One day, I visited my father's church. The congregation whispered, but my father only called me to the front. My child has returned, he said. No anger, no shame, just acceptance. That moment gave me hope. Life wasn't perfect, but I was finally making peace with myself. I built relationships with people who valued me beyond my past choices. Kenzo and I remained friends, and I found new love, not in someone else, but in embracing who I truly was. The moral of the story. Sometimes, in our quest for happiness, we make choices that seemed right, in the moment, but leave us feeling lost in the end. True peace doesn't come from running away, changing appearances, or seeking validation from others. It comes from truly understanding ourselves, accepting our past, and making choices that align with our inner truths. Life is about learning, and sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us to the lesson we need the most.